Biden said an Israeli invasion of Rafah, where apparently there are about 1 million Palestinians sheltering, would be a red line. And then he tried to backpedal a little bit, later saying that, well, I haven't had a come to Jesus meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu about that. But apparently this our relationship is deteriorating to some degree, whether it's over aid, whether it's Israel's strategy relative to Gaza and how they plan on dealing with Hamas. What's your take on this, Daniel Davis?
Yeah, I think it's more than just a backpedal. It was a clarification because he made that very brash and bold statement during the State of the Union that he laid out all how the Palestinian people are mercilessly suffering, and then he said he's going to bring in this floating pier by the U.S. Navy
Yeah.
that he ordered to come and do that. Right. Then he gets caught with that off mic thing saying, I'm going to have a come to Jesus meeting with Netanyahu the next day. He was asked about the red line on MSNBC, and he said, well, I mean, there's no red line that they could cross that I would stop giving them aid, which says to Netanyahu, you have a green light. There is nothing you can do that will stop us. And then he emphatically said on Israeli news the next day that he and his people are tired of, quote, having rammed down our throat the idea of a two-state solution, which we absolutely will not do. Now, given those kinds of comments and then the actions on the Israeli leader, that tells me that our president has no influence and no power to lead or to do anything other than what Israel tells him to do. And I find that personally troubling.
It is troubling, but it also he didn't backpedal on the idea of giving Israel foreign aid, and we give Israel aid every year. So he didn't say I'm withdrawing aid or I'm otherwise going to hold up aid unless Benjamin Netanyahu toes the line on what I want to do, at least insofar as dealing with Rafah or Hamas, generally speaking.
Yeah, and look, we have our own national interest at stake here as well. This is not just whatever Israel wants to do. They had this heinous terrorist attack on the October 7th last year, and by anybody's definition, right, they have every right to go after the people that did it. But they don't have the right to slaughter an entire population's way of life and tens of thousands of their citizens in the process completely wanton. They don't have that right. And America should not be providing unlimited missiles, rockets, artillery shells, and the like on the one hand, and then putting out food and stuff to that same population on the other. That's a really weird kind of dynamics that's simultaneously going on, and then have no voice in how the operation is done. Look, you're Israel. You're a sovereign country. You want to go down that path? We can suggest things. We can't stop you, but you can't do it with our bombs and bullets. If you're going to kill innocent people in the process of doing something that violates every law of war that we follow and demand others follow, then you're going to do it on your own without our stuff. That's entirely reasonable. And in fact, I think that would actually help the Israeli people because they're going down a path that cannot end in success for them, much less for the Palestinian people.
And Daniel, we talked about this last time, and you made similar comments along those lines. And I just want you to do me a favor, a huge favor, and respond to some of my listeners' criticisms in the aftermath of our conversation. Well, the only reason these civilians are dying, and it is tragic, no one can deny that. War is hell, and there's always collateral damage. It's a question of the volume of collateral damage. And many of my listeners were concerned that, listen, there wouldn't be that collateral damage if Hamas wouldn't use the civilian population as human shields in front of their military targets.
Look, there is some of that happening, but look, by the same definition, then the U.S. could have gone into Kabul after 9/11 and flattened the place and wiped it out because there were Taliban all over the place. And in fact, it was. That is not a justifiable reason to say that, yeah, we're hiding better, so everybody's fair game, because it's not. That's not how the law of warfare works. There is still the issue of proportionality, and there's still the obligation on the attacking force to protect the civilian population. And look, I don't care what Israel says with their mouth. Look at all of the voluminous video. They are entirely wiping out entire sections of the city. That's not collateral damage. That is an intentional targeting. And I know that's not popular among some people, but it is an absolute on-the-ground fact. They are wiping out the infrastructure intentionally. It's not haphazard. You look at those maps and you see it as a systematic destruction of the ability of people to have a living afterward, for this thing to sustain life. So that is not collateral damage, I'm afraid.
Well, it is devastating to see the destruction. And in my mind, every time I see that, I go, how long could it possibly take to rebuild just the dwellings so people could live? I mean, there
Yeah.
are buildings, there's just nothing in various towns. So I understand your point. If you had Benjamin Netanyahu's ear on this military operation, and since you have such a vast wealth of military experience, how would you suggest or recommend that he, direct this war or deal with Hamas and help try to preserve the civilian population?
Well, see, this gets to the heart of the issue here. If Israel's intention was to destroy the Hamas terrorists that attacked them, they would have conducted the operation very differently. But the most likely outcome is that Netanyahu desires to expel the Palestinian population, and that is why they want to destroy the abilities to sustain life afterwards, to put pressure on Egypt and Jordan to take all the Palestinian people out. I mean, that is the stated objective of many of Netanyahu's cabinet members. This is not hypothetical. This is what they are saying, holding rallies, etc. So if that's your objective, then what they're doing on the ground makes sense. If their objective was to go after Hamas, which is what I would have recommended, it is a radically different operation, one that we have done in Iraq and in even some degree in Afghanistan, but especially in Iraq, in a place called Ramadi and in some other places where you have targeted intel that goes after where the bad guys are. You go to pains to take care of the civilian population. You go after, like, you may have to go into buildings and go into rooms, which we did. In Fallujah is another
Yes.
example.
Fallujah, I was
Takes
just going to
months
say.
to do, but you can do it and still leave the place intact.
It's an excellent point on kicking doors in Fallujah. I've talked to a number of folks, and you've also served, and you know what it's like to get shot at from underneath the floors and from various points, and you have no way of knowing what's in front of you when you kick a door in. Never ever an easy situation, and I just can't imagine the stress that our soldiers go under when they're in that type of operation. What of the two-state solution? It doesn't sound to me like something Benjamin Netanyahu is interested in at all. And I know Joe Biden has said, we need a two-state solution. What's your take on that, Daniel Davis?
Well, yeah, he said that during the State of the Union speech. He reemphasized it yet again. A two-state solution is the only path out. Got thunderous applause. It's been American policy almost from the get-go. I mean, for decades and decades, we've had that policy. Netanyahu is emphatically saying no two-state solution. He has said it numerous times. He said it again on Sunday, or was it Monday? I can't remember, but a couple of days ago, emphatically said there is no two-state solution on the table. So you have an impasse between the two. And I can just tell you categorically, if there is not a path to peace for both Israel and Palestine, then there will be no peace for Israel or Palestine. They will both stay at enmity. That's why I said at the outset here that Netanyahu is pursuing a path that will lead to more instability that existed before 10/7, not less. He will not bring peace to his people like this.
Well, and I'm sure there are many in the Israeli population that would have no problem with a two-state solution. There are many that are in Netanyahu's camp that say no to that. Hamas
Right.
says no. From the river to the sea, there will be no Israel at all. So they share the same view as Netanyahu, at least from a
Well,
reverse position.
which is why Hamas cannot be part of the political organization that governs afterwards. On that point, I think everybody agrees with Israel. They can't, because that's been their stated objective. They have to find somebody. The Palestinian people have to find somebody that is willing to coexist with Israel, so that there can even be a path to a two-state solution.